Good evening. Can I get a recommendation that the closed meeting be closed and that the board certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting to which this certification applies, and only such business matters as were identified in the motion concerning the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered?
Second.
I have a motion from Mrs. Garner, a second from Mrs. Bailey. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Allgood?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes. At this moment, if you'll please stand as we have our pledge of allegiance and also a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Mr. Nichols, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Honeycutt. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, this is the first meeting of the year, and I want to officially, at our first official meeting, other than open, when we set our agendas and so forth, welcome our new board members to be here with us, and thank you for your commitment to the school board and to the other board members for their return. We do have several award recognitions that we're going to make tonight, and I think we'll begin with Ms. Height with some recognitions that she has.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, school board members, Mr. Nichols. Tonight I have the privilege of handing out a few awards. I'm going to start with the Division Spelling Bee. Last week we held the Division Spelling Bee, and our winner was Wyatt Garner. Unfortunately, I don't see him here this evening, so I'm going to ask Dr. Lax to accept on his behalf. But Wyatt Garner is a Bluestone Middle School student. He will be representing Mecklenburg County Public Schools in March at the Spelling Bee in Richmond. So congratulations to Wyatt. And if I may continue, I'd like to also recognize some students who participated in a video game contest through 4-H. And I'm going to ask Jennifer Bowen to come and give you a brief overview of it, and then we will recognize the students that are here tonight. Ms. Bowen?
Thank you. We are in year 3, and as far as we know, this is our final year for our Tech Changemakers grant, which is a partnership between Microsoft and National 4-H Council. And this past fall, we sponsored our second annual Game Changeneer video game design contest. And Game Changeneer is a free online video game design platform that was developed by Dr. Michael Shao at Virginia Tech. So we had 116 entries this fall. We chose a first and second place winner in elementary, middle, and high school divisions. So we're excited tonight to recognize our winners. All right, in our elementary school division, our first place winner is Howard Horton. Yay, from South Hill Elementary. All right, second place was Aubrey Cranfield from Clarksville Elementary. In our middle school division, our first place winner is Jarrett Stokes from Parkview Middle School. Okay, our second place winner in our middle school division is Ashley Martinez, also from Parkview Middle School. All right, moving on to our high school division, our first place winner was Tyler Sykes from Parkview High School. And our second place winner was Caleb Knott from Bluestone High School. And all of our winners have already received their prizes from Microsoft. Our first place winners got a Microsoft Surface Go tablet. Have you guys enjoyed those? Awesome. All right, thank you so much.
And at this time, while the press is taking pictures, if there are any family members present that want to get up and take a picture as well, please feel free to do so. And also, if all the recipients of any rewards or certificates this evening, if you all will please stay so the board will have a chance to acknowledge it in just a few minutes.
The second place winner's got a backpack. That's nice, too.
Oh, that's cute.
We also have our monthly Senior of the Month awards, and I'll ask Dr. Scales if he'll come up to make those presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and school board members. Once again, we're looking forward to acknowledging and recognizing our Seniors of the Month. First, I'm going to start with Parkview High School's Senior of the Month. Unfortunately, he's not here tonight, but I'll go ahead and read his acknowledgement anyhow. This month, for the month of January, we're recognizing Malcolm York Roberts. Malcolm is the son of Aisha Roberts, and they live in South Hill, and he has two sisters who attend Parkview High School. Charisma McCoy, who's a senior, and Matiana York, a junior. Malcolm is a young man who is genuinely one of the kindest and sweetest young men of the high school. He shows respect toward his teachers and his classmates. He works hard and does all that he is asked and is a joy to have in class. He contributes openly, but with respect in all class discussions. Malcolm also tries to keep peace among his classmates and likes everyone to get along and show respect to others. The teacher who nominated him says this quote, "He is so friendly and always made a point to ask how I was doing and how my day was going. This is not always a typical response for many students." After school each day for the last 2.5 years, Malcolm has worked at McDonald's in South Hill. Malcolm has dreams of becoming a future sports manager or sports agent. He plans on doing so by going to college to either Radford University or Old Dominion University, where he's been accepted at both schools. So if you could give a round of applause for Malcolm York Roberts for his absence. At this time, could I have Jane Claire Elliott to come forward from Bluestone High School?
Hoorah.
Just stand there beside me. All right. In fact, it was kind of coincidental. I happened to see her at the high school today when I came through. Did not know it was her. Now I do. So, Jane Claire Elliott is Bluestone High School's January Senior of the Month. She is the daughter of Michael and Allison Elliott and resides in Buffalo Junction, Virginia. She is a trustworthy and reliable young lady. Her friends always enjoy being around her because of her mannerisms. She is sincere in her words and exemplifies an excellent attitude. She attends Clarksville Baptist Church in Clarksville, where she participates in youth group. Jane Claire's smile is contagious. She is a student at the Governor School of Southside Virginia, and in May she will earn her associate's degree from Southside Virginia Community College. And she'll also finish this year with an advanced diploma from Bluestone High School. She is a member of the Spanish Club and Beta Club. Jane Claire is the founder of and president of Barron's Minds Matter. Outside of school, she serves as the vice president of the Mecklenburg Junior Women's Association and is also a junior member of the Clarksville Rueton Club. Jane Claire told me today that she wants to go to her first choice being the William & Mary, but she's also looking at Christopher Newport College as well. She's also been accepted right now by James Madison University, Go Dukes, and Elon College.
Go Phoenix.
When asked of her number one selection, again, is with College of William & Mary, and upon graduation, Jane Claire envisions becoming the Director of Marketing in a corporation or business, and I know you will succeed in doing so. So again, give a round of applause for Jane Claire.
When I leave between 6 and 6:15 in the morning, I get to watch her go to school. So that's how dedicated she is. She is.
She stood in the perfect place. She gets in the way of me and the camera.
Congratulations.
And Mr. Honeycutt, I believe you have some awards that you want to bring.
Yes, sir, I sure do. At this time, I would ask that all principals and assistant principals please come up in line in front of the board members right here up front. I'm going to ask Ms. Garner to join me at the podium out there, please. Don't be shy, we don't bite. Y'all come on up around here.
No raise either.
What is that squeak? What is that squeak? I wonder too, what is that squeak?
This is a first for me since I've been on the school board in 4 years, but this is Principal and Assistant or Principal's Appreciation Week. And along with our teachers who we appreciate so very much, this board and myself also appreciate you and what you all do collaboratively together in your schools to make or to help our students achieve. And I can assure you, it does not go unnoticed. Without you, we wouldn't have any sanity within the schools every day. You all keep things going, you set schedules, you handle discipline. You all have a lot on you. You have a big job that you do every day. And again, we appreciate you. Mecklenburg County Public Schools appreciate all you do. At this time, I'm going to read the resolution that was presented by the governor. And also, I have a certificate here and also a very small memento of appreciation from the board. So again, thank you. Whereas school principals work collaboratively to direct, develop, and inspire all members of the school staff and student body, and to communicate effectively with parents to engage them in the learning process. And whereas principals serve as educational leaders responsible for managing the policies, regulations, and procedures necessary to ensure a safe and effective learning environment for all students in Virginia's public and private schools. And whereas principals and teachers are entrusted with the opportunity and the responsibility of guiding, directing, nurturing, mentoring, and imparting knowledge to our children while they are at school. And whereas principals must work collaboratively with teachers, staff, students, parents, and the community at large to proactively prepare students to be self-reliant and productive citizens. And whereas Virginia School Principals Appreciation Week is an opportunity to recognize the hard work of Virginia school principals and to recognize the importance of principals in ensuring that every child has access to quality education. Now therefore, I, Ralph S. Northam, do hereby recognize January 19th through the 25th, 2020, as Virginia School Appreciation Week in our Commonwealth of Virginia, and I call this observance to the attention of all our citizens. And again, thank you very much.
I'm going to start with the principals. Mr. Fred Taylor. Oh, Fred. Ms. Ann Dalton. Ms. Connie Puckett. Ms. Michelle Eisenhower. Dr. Paige Lax. Mr. Jonathan Dixon. Ms. Maggie Wilkerson. I don't think Maggie's here.
We'll get Maggie.
Okay. Ms. Dominique Sturdivant. Moving on to the assistant principal, Ms. Lauren Thompson. Ms. Stephanie Neal. Ms. Candace Adcock. Ms. Amanda Shook. Mrs. Melissa Chumney. Not here. Mrs. Lakeisha Horton. Oh, there she is. Ms. Velva Kinley. Mr. Chris Clark. Mr. Timothy Cochran. Not here. Ms. Amy Wright. Not here.
Again, thank you all very much. If you all would stay here, and we're going to ask that all the recipients, Dr. Jennings, whatever this evening, please come up and join our assistant principals, so our board members can have a chance to greet all of you all. Mr. Nichols.
Thank you very much, Mr. Honeycutt. As we look at the items that we have on the agenda for tonight as business items, I'd just like to notify the board that at the financial workshop, or at the financial meeting before this, I requested of the board that we have a work meeting on February the 10th. And many of the items that we will go through tonight will be items that will be for your information and preparation for that workshop, not just budget, but some other things that we'll have an opportunity to discuss when we have that working meeting. So a lot of this is informational data. There are a couple of items on here that have come up in relatively last minute, and we will be asking for a vote on them tonight. That's not our usual habit, but they are being asked of that in that way because there's some issues that need to be taken care of pretty quickly, or possibly pretty quickly afterwards. So with that information as a foundation, I've asked Ms. Height if she would share with you the fall SOL scores.
And Mr. Dixon, if you would hit that second light switch closest to the door. Thank you.
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman. As Mr. Nichols stated, he asked me to put together a brief presentation just to show the scores that we have up to this point. As you know, in October, our high school 11th grade students take the writing SOL, and then in the month of December is when our middle schools and high schools take their first semester. Those students who are enrolled in first semester classes that have an SOL, they took the test. From that, we have the following results. For Bluestone High School, and this is a combined total of Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, they have a combined score of 78%. In History, they have a combined score of 64%. In Science, they have 62%. In English, they have 70%. And in Writing, they have 64%. And again, these are just the scores from first semester. So we will average in our second semester scores with these to get our average for the year. English and Writing will be combined also to have one reading total. Parkview High School yielded the following results for the fall semester: 87% for math, 72% for history, 71% for science, 67% for English, and 57% for writing. And again, English and writing will be combined at the end of the year. Bluestone Middle School, they only test in the fall semester civics and science. Half the students take civics, half the students take science, and now they're in the opposite one at this point. Bluestone Middle School finished with 91% in civics and finished with 82% in science. Again, they will be testing these areas again in the spring. Parkview Middle School finished with 85% in civics and 88% in science. Parkview High School also has a math class that is doing a split class where they had algebra first semester and they'll have geometry second semester. It was a very unique opportunity that this school had, and that algebra group finished with 100%, which is why they have one more score than Bluestone. That's it. So those are the scores that we have at this point. Again, we will start testing March the 3rd and the 4th with writing again at both high schools. We will also test writing at the middle school, 8th grade level, and then the whole month of May we will start testing again. And then we'll have a complete report at the end of the school year. Questions?
Are we going
Board
to,
members, do you all have any questions?
I do.
Yes, Mr.
Chairman.
Edwards.
Are we going to balance this math class with Bluestone Middle School next year, or are we going to continue down this road?
If they have the opportunity to do that, I feel certain they will, but I can't
I know,
answer that
I
question.
understand. I just thought I'd bring it to everyone's attention.
Yeah, I couldn't answer that question.
Right.
It was an offering to the Bluestone Middle School students.
Nobody signed up?
It's my understanding that we had none that were prepared to take that class at the time.
I believe Mrs. Lax is in the room. Mrs. Lax, did you all have anybody that wanted to participate in this? Can you speak to that? If you will, please come to the podium because we're being recorded.
We did not offer that setup for our students this year because we do not have a teacher in our building
Okay,
who is
sorry.
certified to teach geometry. We're looking at measures, though, to be able to offer this to our students next year. It's going to involve some creative scheduling with the high school. We're going to have to get together in conjunction with them to work something out. But, of course, working with guidance to make sure that we're putting the students that have this opportunity that are the right people for this, because we don't want to advance students along who might not be ready. So using specific criteria that we come up with guidance, as well as with Parkview Middle School, to identify those students moving forward.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Dalton if he will come up to and introduce the next program with Sun Tribe Solar.
Mr. Nixon, if you could pop the lights back, thank you very much. We won't shed some light on Mr. Dalton.
No, I might want to shed too much light. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and school board members. Tonight, I'm pleased to have Sun Tribe Solar with us. They've done numerous K-12 projects throughout the Commonwealth. We met at the Virginia School Plant Managers Association in October, and we were very excited to hear what they had to say and what they have to offer us at our schools. So we asked them to kind of come and visit. We toured our elementary school sites. And tonight we have Mr. Frank Dubeck with Sun Tribe Solar, and he's going to give you a presentation for information night only. Thank you.
Intro. It's good to be here. A lot of really good energy tonight. Congratulations on all the success. I was telling Brian walking in the door that I'm doing a bunch of renovations in my house, and I picked the wrong week to do insulation. So when I walked in, it was heated, it was clean, smiling people, and I figured even if I bomb this presentation, at least I will have that, and I will call that a win. I'm Frank Dubeck, Sun Tribe Solar. I'm my colleague, Seth Herman from Sun Tribe. Yes, as Brian mentioned, we toured your schools and put together a proposal that, in summary, would save your school system 5.5% on your electricity bill, and over the course of 30 years, about over $1.1 million. Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. I think a key distinction here, because your community is not a stranger to solar, is this is solar on your property. It goes direct to your schools for your facilities to use. It's not getting fed up and down. Oh, good. We're basically a construction company that plays in the solar space. I think more fundamental to our DNA, we understand the inevitability of renewable energy, and we're really finding partners to bring that to fruition. We call our customers partners. One, it's the right way that we want to look at the people that we work with, but also the programs and deals that we put together are long-term, so it's really important that we have a really solid, strong working relationship. This is the reason why we become who we are and why people select us to work with their schools. To understand our ambition around the company we've built is around the people, and we've selected people from across the country with global utility scale experience. So people working on giant power generating facilities. That's germane to what we're doing here, because some of you are probably familiar with residential solar. I can sort of like look at your roof and get solar panels up there on an afternoon. In the scale that we're talking about for your school systems, small decisions have really big implications. So we have 3 professional engineers, we have journeymen, we have master electricians, we have a phalanx of project managers to make sure that we're owning all the steps of the value chain, from the development, which is my role, engineering, construction, operations, and maintenance. So by the numbers, we are 80 people. We've done 50 projects in the state. We probably have about 9, we'll kick off a couple more soon, underway right now. We've installed over 10,000 solar panels. This has led us to become the largest power purchase agreement provider in the state of Virginia. And when you look at the primary queue, which is the Dominion pilot program, between selling and constructing, we've touched over 80% of that. This is super important to us. Of course, we're following code. Of course, we're monitoring our systems really closely. We're always looking for the best equipment. The gist of this is really we're going to be working with you to things that are beyond code. So it could be as simple as like access points to your mechanical equipment, or bigger things like blackout dates, or you're not going to see a Sun Tribe crane at 3 p.m. when your buses are picking up your students. That said, safety is critical for us, your staff, your students, your parents, our teams as well. We actually have a certified safety professional. He's an OSHA trainer. He ran the program for the University of Virginia. He's a full-time staffer for us. We spend a lot of time on this with site-specific training, site IDs, zero tolerance, and non-escalation. You can see in this photo, those 2 gentlemen are wearing hard hats, safety vests, cut-proof gloves. In this case, we're not proposing any roof systems, but that is a roof system, and that we own a couple $100,000 worth of safety fencing. For your properties, we're looking at ground mounts. These are 2 examples of ground mounts. They're really cool, simple, solid state, non-moving parts, safe to the touch. They're fenced in. The only real sound that is made from that box in the left photo, that box right there is an inverter. There's some fans that spin. Those spool up when the sun's shining really bright. You'd have to do a lot of work to injure yourself in this. That said, this shows the grass we maintain inside the fence. We've recently switched over to pollinator-friendly grasses, so things for honeybees, for butterflies, for birds. We think it's the right thing to do, and it's an added bonus to what we're doing for these facilities. Power purchase agreements are what makes this possible. In its simplest terms, it's an agreement to buy the electricity produced by the system on your property for a given period of time. There's no out-of-pocket costs for this. There's no maintenance costs. We deal with everything soup to nuts. This is the world we live in. So this is Dominion's rates. over the last 15 years. Basically, most grids you're seeing have escalation in it. In this case, Dominion, which are the 3 schools we're looking at, year-over-year average is 2.53%. So this is kind of what we're hedging against when we're coming and proposing solar energy for you all. My graph skills don't quite match up to how cool this is, but in the blue line is basically your total energy cost over the course of 30 years. The green line represents what it would look like after solar, and the magic blue is your savings of $1.1 million. I think Einstein said the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest. This is a good example of that. Middlesex has been a great partner of ours. Dr. Gretz has been a huge proponent in Bullhorn for us. We've loved him. We've loved working with them. It's also been featured in PBS and the Washington Post. This was a cool, Seth was actually part of setting this up, but this was a cool moment where we got to bring students. Integration is important to us in building the next sort of fleet of solar champions. So this is a cool opportunity for students to get involved. Behind them, you can see the fencing, you can see the array. So they were out there doing a lesson plan where they got all handed an apple. The teacher asked them, where does the apple come from trees? How do trees grow the sun? And they were able to connect the dots between what the sun's actually doing and what solar does. If we get to work with you, we'd be joining a strong list of other partners we've worked with. Virginia Beach, we recently awarded RFP. Newport News is signed on for the first wave of schools. And we're also going to be building a slew of carports for Fairfax. Really excited about it. And here's where our missions align. So if we are trying to find the next wave of solar stewards, so to speak, what we want to be able to do if we get to work with you is provide grants to have a curriculum integration. And so we worked with the NEED project for a while. We can work with them now, but I think what I want to signal to you is it's can be highly tailored to what you've got going on in your areas or what you would like to see. So I know that Southside Community College has got some programs for electrical certificates. I think there's some solar programs in there. I believe this area through another, I think, utility solar company had actually done a like solar summer camp. So we'd be really open to what your feedback would be, what would fit your group the best, and we would love to contribute to making that happen. Here's a quick summary before I move on to the proposal. This is about hedging rising energy costs, supporting your sustainability and green initiatives, and ultimately connecting your students to what is a very tech-centric energy future. Any questions so far? Okay. Here's a quick outline of what we're looking at. No upfront costs, no maintenance costs, 9.34 energy price, 1% escalator over 30 years with a forecasted lifetime savings of $1.1 million. That forecast is based on where you're at now with this program versus where the grid has historically gone. We spent about 50 hours at this point, engineering time. We've been on site, we've looked at your electrical rooms, we've walked the land. We've gotten feedback from everyone on how this would play out best. And these are the proposed locations of your ground mount solar arrays. The blue designates water area, the dark blue designates what the array would actually look like, the orange designates what we would need to do for tree clearing and setting the site up. Shading is not good in our business. I know you're saying there's a big open field right there. Why don't you build it in that spot? We thought we could, but it's actually a drain field, so we have to stay off of that. And then here's the final one. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Thank you so much for having us here. We'd love the chance to work with you. Happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
I do have a question, one question.
Sure.
For Mr. Nichols, and I guess Mr. Dalton as well. The proposed sites that you have to put the solar panels, is that property the school already owns?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so we wouldn't have to obtain that or buy that from anybody else?
No.
Okay. Any other board members have any other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Edwards?
At the end of the 30-year period, who's responsible for dismantling these and y'all take them
SunTribe
down?
has that responsibility.
put
It's
the
all
land-
baked in the agreement.
Put the land right back where it was?
100%, yeah.
Or enhance it further with something, new technology or whatever, if you're in that business?
Yeah, who knows what the world's going to look like then?
Right, yeah, we don't
But
know.
yes, we're going to take back the system.
Okay, that's,
A couple of comments to add.
One other question from Ms. Bailey.
Sorry.
Mr. Dalton, I wonder if you could describe this procurement process.
Mr. Dalton, if you would come up to the microphone, please. I hate to keep having to say that, but I just want to make sure we're getting it all in.
Yes, we'll be following cooperative procurement, where we pretty much be piggybacking onto schools that have already done RFPs for this. We do that a lot to keep from having to do an RFP.
You notice the number of schools that they've already begun working with. That's the way that they started with Middlesex. They've gotten a great program. Middlesex has opened it up for superintendents and others to be able to come in and look at. They are saving a significant amount of money, and we are allowed to really be able, as he's mentioned, to piggyback on what they've got going for this.
But there are other solar vendors, so how does that work from a competition standpoint?
We went out and looked at the schools that were doing solar projects, and like you said, SunTribe was the largest provider. And just going by their track record, that we wanted to work with who the majority of the other school systems were working with.
I have a question. Since
Mr.
you
Edwards?
stepped up to the pump.
Mhm.
Since we own a lot of land that we're going to abandon in 2.5 years, could we keep that land and do the same projects on all of our vacant land rather than abandoning these schools, put solar panels on it, and return it to the grid for credit with this company?
Well, I had looked at that, and I've talked to them about that, but that's not exactly what
What they
SunTribe
do.
does. That would be some totally different.
Okay,
Right.
just an idea.
Yes, yeah, I thought about that, and that may be in the works, but that's a long ways down the road.
Right, okay.
Can I ask a quick question, similar to what Mr. Edwards was saying? I know there were some concerns in the county about solar farms. If something was to happen to SunTribe and they cease to exist 10 years down the road, is there money set aside to dismantle?
This is like a house. It's a bankable asset, so
Okay.
it's not going to languish.
Okay.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, question. The systems that are across the line in Carolina, are they similar to the ones, I'm very familiar with the ones across the line over in Warren County, Henderson, Vance County, that is. Mr. Dalton, do you know whether or not they were similar?
I think what you're talking about is actually a generator, where they're actually generating to the grid through a power company. So they're part of that power company's generation portfolio. What we're talking about here is supplementing what we already are using from the grid and from Dominion in this case, with solar panels. No cost to us, maintenance free, and our power purchase agreement is with SunTribe to buy the power cheaper than what we can buy it from our local utility.
Sure.
That's where the savings come in from. And I understand where you're getting at, but those, I think that's a totally different scale. Those are large solar farms that actually go into to the generation portfolio of that power company.
Board, Mrs. Bailey?
Is there, do we not have the property in Clarksville to do the same project? Is that why they're not included in this elementary project?
The property, we actually looked at two options. One option where Clarksville was included, but the payback there, because of the site work it will take, because there's several trees down, and it's a large oak grove of trees, and the amount of trees that would have to be cleared on the back of Clarksville Elementary School, it pulled your bottom line down so much. So I think we were not even cash flow positive after the first year. We were 2 years into it before we saw any savings, and it was minimal. So our lines didn't actually cross till about year 28 within the project where our savings were parallel. So it just wasn't feasible at that time. Not to say Clarksville will never get solar, but it's just something that we chose not to visit within this project because we were going after the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, with the initial savings. And I believe in option 2, I don't know if it's listed out here, but in option 2, I think the savings was right around $4,000 in year 2. Don't hold me to that. I can definitely get you some hard figures on that, but it was a lot more savings up front within option 2. And the great thing about that is Mecklenburg Electric is where Clarksville is Mecklenburg Electric. So we were a little bit iffy whether or not they've worked with Dominion multiple times, but being Mecklenburg Electric is a co-op and not exactly a generator, we didn't know exactly how that would go either.
Any other questions? Mr. Nichols?
Well, I just wanted to also point out that we're not at the stage right now to be having a conversation about the new school project, but we will be looking at options when that becomes more feasible as to what that will mean for us.
Can I say just one thing? Frank started off by saying this is all about partnerships, and I know we looked at that list of schools, but we've been really fortunate to be brought back to do phase 2 with several school districts across the state, and that was brought back within sometimes 6 months of starting working together or 12 months of working together. So this path for procurement, if it goes through and the school board approves, it's very easy to add additional systems. So what we were looking at was, how does this get this started? How do we start this relationship? Show you some value, get you some savings, and if there's a new school down the line or a piece of land that opens up, you've already cleared the procurement hurdle. You already have a relationship. You get to see what we can do, and then we can look at those sites and try to work together again. And that really is our hope. It's all about the partnership.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having me.
We'll be back in touch. Item C is related to the 2021 fiscal year budget. As I mentioned before, we are looking to have a work. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the old one. Parkview. Okay, there, yes, we have Parkview school trip, field trips. That's a vote that will be coming up tonight. I don't believe, is that new field trip we're requesting? Okay. Please come up. Ms. Sturdivant.
Good evening, Mr. Nichols and school board. There are 2 field trips, I think, that have been presented to you. One is a local field trip. It is Make It Happen through SVCC, and that is for kind of an early outreach for a gentleman to experience or understand some of the opportunities at the local level for college. And the other is also a field trip that didn't get submitted for semester. So that is another that is before you. Just another opportunity, educational opportunity for students.
Board member have any questions? Thank you, Ms. Sturdivant.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, now, the fiscal year budget. On February the 10th, we'll be looking to have our next meeting, but I have data for you that I placed at your tables. This is data that's related to the requests that each of the schools and the departments have made. This is a part of the year when we've gathered that information, starting with the board itself, and then looking to the schools, the principals, the administration for their recommendations for next year. We will be looking at this. You have the opportunity between now and the 10th to look at this, and then we'll be going through this information and what we will be considering as far as next year's revenues, projections that we have from the state at this point, and what we will be able to pull together or with my recommendation move forward with for the budget. But this is for your information, unless you have any initial questions. All right, then, as well, we have some information about the new middle and high school complex that I want to bring to your attention. We'll be doing this each month. As we're looking at this data, first of all, I'd like to report that we have the new bond request that has been secured by the Board of Supervisors. They will need to take that bond request to the public at their meeting. Before they can do that, we have to officially vote that it is our desire to take that bond to them. We have a representative from Davenport here tonight, if he would like to come and make any statements about the bond itself and answer any questions that you might have.
Hi, how's everybody this evening?
Good evening.
Thank you for having me. Here at your disposal, really, if you have questions regarding the upcoming financing. The reason why you have a resolution in front of you this evening is so that you can ask the county board to issue their GO obligation through the VPSA spring pool. Additionally, you're also approving to make application to the VPSA spring pool program. So that application is due on February 24th, and you're getting ahead of that so that everything falls into place to stay on track with that timing and preserve your place in the queue if you should participate in the spring pool. And as Mr. Nichols pointed out, the county board will actually be taking their action at their March 9th meeting. That's where they'll hold their public hearing and consider taking action on the resolution that they'll have before them at that time based on your request for them to do so.
Board members, yes, Mrs. Bailey.
Were you involved with drafting this resolution?
No, ma'am. I'm on the finance side. The counties / schools bond council are the folks that drafted the resolution before you. But if you have questions, I'd be happy to try to address them or at least follow up with you.
Well, I just have a question
Sure.
in number one. Aggregate principal amount not in excess of $39,300,000, but with the objective of providing up to $35,150,000. Can you explain?
Yes, ma'am. And that's a great question. Big picture, though, the county will not issue any more bonds than it has to fund the $35 million project, okay? The way the bond markets work, currently we're in a sort of a premium structure. So interest rates that the bond investors want are higher than what current yields are. So what they're doing is willing to pay the county a premium to get those higher coupons on your bonds. What could happen, a shift in the market may, depending on how time tracks, but investors might switch depending on who wants to buy those bonds, and that relationship would inverse where the coupons that the county is promising to pay are lower than what the market is doing for yields. And so then you'd have to discount those bonds. So that's the long way to say that $39 million represents a conservative number should that market switch to a discount structure and VPSA goes to sell the bonds out in the market, and you would be caught short if you didn't have that flexibility. But again, the way that shakes out, you are effectively, whether it's original issue premium or original issue discount, you're going to only issue the bonds that you need to issue, the county, and effectively the debt service essentially is break even, regardless of the structure. It's just how the bond investors want to purchase those bonds.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other board members have any other questions?
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Another item that came up actually today, when we had the groundbreaking on December the 20th, that was a very exciting time for the county and for our school division, but it was not the point at which the construction company would begin moving dirt or doing other work. That is what is considered to be the notice to proceed. The difference is even after we had the groundbreaking ceremony, the construction company needed to go back and secure the bonds necessary and be able to award bids to the subcontractors and things of that nature. I was notified, or I should say that we received today, Ms. Giammattio did, the information from the construction company that they are ready for us to send to them the notice to proceed. And as it is stated here, the date of commencement is established by this notice to begin on January the 27th of 2020, which is the date we had talked about, we had hoped for, as we had conversation with Skanska and with Ballou Justice Upton. And I will note that it says, under this contract with no interruptions, there is an expectation that the building component, the building itself should be done by April 26th of 2022, and then looking at the grounds itself with athletic facilities and so forth by June the 25th of 2022. That was at the request of ours and with the architect, so that we would have from April until the opening of school to get furniture and things of that nature built into the building. So we feel comfortable with this, and I anticipate signing this letter and sending it to them tomorrow. With that in mind, though, we begin looking at issues that come up that are brought to our attention about any changes and change orders that might come up. And I have had a chance to mention to many board members, to some, about one first change that has come up. It has come to our attention, and I will ask if the slide might be brought up. That on the grounds itself, if you notice the field that is over in the top right corner, was the soccer field that was or identified as a practice field. Thank you. This area right here, for those of you on the other side, in between these fields is one of the dry bed creeks that's costing us so much money with the Corps of Engineers, right in here. And this road separates this field from most of the major activities that are going on. It was put in just as a way of being able to get there, but it's costing us a significant amount of money with this field actually being so far away from all of the activities that are going on. One of the board members that I checked with about the use of this field was Mr. Allgood, who, of course, as we all know, has been doing lots of band work in the past and where the band would practice. The football field, soccer field, athletic field for the high school will be a turf field, and there will always be doing practicing and things on that field, and it won't hurt it any. We don't have to protect that one like we have to some of the others. But he stated that from the perspective of if there were other things going on, even this field down on the middle school area would be a much more conducive area for students to be able to get to for activities that are going on than this field would be. And in fact, the way we have the engineers put it together as we look at the movement of dirt and ground and so forth, all of these areas in dark lines through here, and even in this area right here, is where there'll be a really significant grade of hill. So this would be down grade of the hill significantly. So our thinking in hindsight is that this area will be much more conducive to some of our future agriculture needs, as this area right in here is what the Board of Supervisors has purchased with the idea of making it more available for our work to be done for the Environmental Science Center. And so to save money, we're looking at actually taking out this construction right here over this creek, which is pretty significant, and saving ourselves some time and making this now more of a, we will still take dirt from this because this dirt is necessary, but we won't necessarily look at using that as a field that would go along with the athletic facilities as much as we might be able to use it otherwise. And so the first actual change order that we would have would be to take that bridge out, that road out right there. And I would like to have your permission to send this change order as they can begin construction, because they want to begin construction by January 27th.
What's a credit? Do we have a credit for that yet?
We are not looking to request an immediate credit, because the engineers have told us it would be better to go ahead and then make the change and get that credit back. We don't know an exact figure, but we do know it will be a savings to us.
Where is the bond going to be?
These two areas right here and right here. And for those of you on this side, right here and right here, that's where the ponds are.
She said
She had barn.
Oh, barn, excuse me, I thought you said the ponds.
Barn.
Okay, the barn is still, we had originally planned for the barns and the greenhouses to be right in this area right here. And we have had conversations with Virginia State University and with local Farm Bureau and others, and they are still suggesting that because this is a major field that we would be using for the agriculture program, and this is an area that would be used for the agriculture program, and we're able, that's what these drawings are for, we'll be able to get back and forth among these areas with the old railroad bed right in here. Then the barn is still scheduled to be placed right in this area, and the greenhouses right in this area.
I do have a question, Mr. Nichols, if I could borrow your pointer for a second. And and again, I guess my first question would be the property up here. They said the Board of Supervisors bought the property for the school. At what point will they give us the land to use for our agriculture needs?
Well, we've had some conversation with some members of the board to get their advice on issues, and of course, they have to act as a board to be able to turn that back over. Our plan in requesting that land, and this is what we've had agriculture meetings so far, is to put a plan together that would begin immediately upon entry into the building. So like we've done with maintenance, we have a year one plan, a year two plan, year three plan on what we would want to be able to do with the land. That's why we're getting input from Virginia State, from the local, all of the different farm agencies that will work with us on that. And they have been very, very positive in coming and meeting with us and working with us, walking over the land with us. So we will be taking to the Board of Supervisors a plan and a request to go along with that plan to get that.
And again, I guess my next question would be, you're saying the barn in here and the greenhouses here, and I believe this is a big drop-off right in here in this area.
The area, if I may, this area right here is a fairly significant drop-off.
Right.
And now the barn would be at the bottom of that so that there will not be any issues.
And I guess my question would be, if in fact the Board of Supervisors, since they use, I believe they bought that with some of our monies, if that in fact is the case, why wouldn't we want to locate the barn right here where it's in adjacence to all of this and it can be right here together instead of climbing or going up roads or hills?
We had considered that. That was a thought that we had as we had some of the earlier meetings. Again, that's going back to recommendations that have been made by our local Farm Bureau and those agents that work with farmers all the time on where to place things. And they have recommended that because of the type of farming activity that would be most conducive in here as opposed to here, with the type of activities that we currently have our teachers teaching, we can start here and then have a different type of activity going on in this area. So it's with recommendation, and it could be subject to change before we do that building.
And the reason why I said that is, the barn, and I would assume that property, and again, I'm just assuming because they haven't given it to us yet, but I would assume that property, they've talked about cows, we've got cows now, and maybe eventually pigs or goats or whatever. I just worry about, they got to bring them from way up there all the way down here to this barn to either milk them or whatever they're going to do with them. It just is not conducive to where the property sits right at this time. It looks like to me it would be more feasible here, again, where this extra plot is to the far right-hand side of the stadium. Just my opinion.
That soccer field is about a 12 to 15-foot fall straight down that hill. If you look at the elevation on it, I mean, it's
It's
down a
significant.
bank on a flat land. So
Right.
getting to it is going to be a problem.
And that was my concern. That's why I was saying, you know, if we moved it in conjunction with the property.
That's what I mean, the soccer field on the right over there should go away. I agree with that, and that saves that money.
Right.
Question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Allgood.
I don't mean this specifically funny, but after being at Bluestone for years, you can smell when you're playing football. Those of you who've been to Bluestone when the wind's just right, would you really want cows that close to the football stadium?
We can raise that question again.
I like to be able to go to a game and not smell the game.
Depends on who gets elected next term. We may not have cows.
I have a question.
Football game might stink, but we want to leave it on the field, not somewhere else.
But, and you will also remember that the barn and the greenhouses are not a part of the general contract work being done by Cleveland. We pulled that, and that's separate. We're not going to be doing that immediately. So we have time, again, to revisit the specific issues of where they will go.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Bailey.
When we eliminate that road in the back that you mentioned, that it looks like it cuts in front of the softball and the baseball field?
Yes.
And goes over to that field that we're no longer going to
Yes.
do. Do we still have access to the baseball and softball fields
Oh, yes.
from the stadium?
The primary road is coming right straight up here, and so all of that is supporting the handicap access parking, and all that is going to be there. It's just this little area right in here.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members?
It's also a safety issue as it's been looked at, because it's easy for students to get into a place where they're not being seen if we keep that there, and there's all those woods in there between them. All right. So that's an item that will be brought up in the board action tonight. Okay. Mr. Honeycutt, do you want to mention your ideas about the school board norms?
Yes, I will say that we have been very busy as a board since we started back in January of 2020. We met the day after our organizational meeting. We had seven board members who participated, and we have before you, and you all should have gotten a copy, and you do have a hard copy in front of you, a copy of Mecklenburg County School Board Norms. I hope that you all have had a chance to read them over. This is up for an action item tonight, and I'd like to ask briefly Mr. Allgood or Mrs. Smith if they would like to say a little something about what happened that day and what were your feelings during that meeting. Ms. Smith?
Well, we had a very good session that day. We had been looking at our board and how we could work together, and we discussed a lot of things that would help us in the future for the board. And we decided many things like that would help us. We talked about the ethical code of conduct for board members, how we would place items on the agenda, how to respond to staff or community complaints at board meetings. We talked about our relationship as a board and our relationship with our school system. And we know that our superintendent is in charge of all the staff members of the schools, and we would have good communications. So I think we're working to be an improved board that will really operate together to benefit our school system. The communications and the collaborations we find is very important, especially in this day and time, as we're building this new middle and high school. So it was really a great session we had. We discussed how we would respond to media inquiries, how we would use the social media for our expectations in professional development. And really, since I've joined already, we've been to, I know, 2 conferences. We have webinars. I had one webinar session this past Wednesday on school safety, and it talked about the new building of new schools and how they use different materials in certain sections to make the schools of the future more safe for everyone. The materials and things, so it was exciting. We're doing some exciting things as a school board, and we've just attended a conference this past Monday and not this past Monday, but last Monday and Tuesday in Richmond. And it was exciting because we talked about school board law. We learned a lot about the law. We're learning more about Robert's Rules of Order, which I saw a simplified book that I'm going to purchase. You know, it's deep. We had very exciting speakers to speak to us. We have a great Virginia School Boards Association who comes to us and helps to direct us and guide us so that we can serve our public better, in a better way. So I'm really excited about the things that we're doing and how we do talk to one another. And we make sure, and we have our chairman and vice chairman are working together beautifully to help us. And so I expect to see greater things, and I'm just excited to be a part of this board. But we're up to date on things because we're attending a lot of conferences and things and staying up on what is really happening and giving guidelines about what to do when situations, what if, when. And so this was something that we needed. We really needed. I'm new, I'm learning. But the things that I'm learning, I'm really excited about and happy in a positive way. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Allgood, anything to add to that?
I agree a lot with you, Ms. Smith. Coming into this, you know, I joked about it earlier, I had all the answers. And when I got here, I felt like Bambi in the headlights. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, we have to do that, and I didn't know we did that. And thank God for Ms. Giammattio, because she'll call me and say, Ricky, you forgot to send this form in, or when I called her to ask her for my username again because I forgot it, and thank God she's there. But this is, I guess you'd say, the nuts and bolts of how to do our jobs, because I can do stupid all by myself, but I'd like to be able to not be stupid when it comes to working with the board.
Yes.
I'd like to be on the ball and know I can do this, I can't do this, I can disagree with Ms. Bailey on an open discussion, and we can do it above board and still leave here as friends. And I think, not to step on toes, I think in years past, that hasn't always been the case. And I'd like to see us stay that way. We're smiling now, let's see if we can do it by the end of the meeting.
This was something that was very much needed, and we're setting ourselves to a new set of standards by adopting this. This is something that I would have liked to have seen the last 4 years. Again, like I said, I can't look in the rearview mirror. I can only look ahead. So from here on out, if the board wishes and desires to, and we adopt these Mecklenburg County Board norms tonight, this is what I will follow as chair of this board. So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
First of all, I agree with 90% of this. It's the other 10 I don't really agree with. And the reason I don't, and I don't attend a lot of meetings and conferences, I've been on the school board for 16 years. I do my homework, actually. What bothers me is when we take taxpayer money and 8 or 9 people go and stay a week at a conference, stay in motels and play golf and marathons and free dinners and motel rooms. And that, I just think that money could be better used for education of the children and to benefit the professional development of our teachers and staff. That's just my feeling. Also, in this the school board norms, one of the last things you got is violations 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'd like to know what happens when you get 4 violations? What is the school board going to do? I want to know.
Well, actually,
Because
Mr.
I talked to clerk of circuit court, and they don't seem to think it has any meat to it. I just want to know where you're going with it, because I want to know ahead of time if I need to prepare myself.
Actually, Mr. Edwards, this corrected copy that you received, and I appreciate your comments. The copy that you got today did not have that last page on it. I had asked Ms. Giammatteo this afternoon to please call and give this to you.
Okay.
That is something that I would like for us to discuss at our work session.
Right.
The violations, what they would be, what we as a board would agree to. Number one violation, if we were out of order in a public setting, would the chair censure or whoever censure that board person? But again, I would like for us to collaboratively work together to come up with what do we think the first offense should be? What do we think the second offense should be? And the third offense, and after the third offense, we'll make a decision, hey, look, we're going to ask that you step off of the board because you're not handling yourselves appropriately. So, and again, I'd love for us to be able to do that together, and that was one of the things I was going to ask for at our work session.
That's good. It's, that's fine if that works for you. We can't even control our children in the schools, and now we're going to start disciplining the school board members. I think we got a problem. That's my only problem. I've been on here 16 years, and I just see this. I don't want to be treated like a kid the first day out in my 5th time of getting elected. So that's just my feeling, and I'm going to try to work with the board all I can. But every once in a while, I have opinions, and like I'm giving you now, which means nothing to anybody because I'm sure it's going to pass anyway. But the public knows how I feel, and my constituents know, and that's the reason I wanted to bring this up tonight.
Well, and that's a great thing about a board is, it's 9 of us, and that all of us have our opinions. But again, like Mrs. Smith said, at the end of the day, we can agree to disagree. But there have been a lot of undue and unjust shenanigans since I have sat on this board in the last 4 years. Ms. Patterson did relay to us that we are almost one of 2 of school divisions across the state that do not have board norms in place in how we're supposed to act as adults. And moving forward, we have 2 new board members. We're getting ready to build a new school. And I just think that by putting this in place, it will hold all of us accountable. And again, that we should all act like adults, and we're all on the same page moving forward.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Garner.
I have some. Mr. Honeycutt and I have been chair and vice chairman for 3 weeks?
Yes, ma'am.
3 weeks. And when we were nominated and elected, we decided that we would work together because we have a new school. And as he says, we've had our differences in the past, but we decided it's more important to go forward working together. So we've already had a luncheon together. We discussed things, and very openly, too. Very openly. And we decided that if things came up, then we would discuss it, and then through the superintendent, the other board members would know. And I think, and I hope that we plan more meetings between our regular meetings so that we can come up with the way the board will go forward and be on the same page and follow procedures. And I think that's the most important steps. And this way, we're not going to be stepping over each other and causing hard feelings. And so far, I think it's worked. I've had problems. I've gone to Mr. Honeycutt, and he has carried it on in the proper channels. So I think right now, 3 weeks, we're on a good road to go forward. The board norms, I will say with Mr. Edwards, they're not perfect. And since these are our first ones, if they need adjusting later, then we can go back and redo some of them. But I think it's a good step in the right direction for board, county, and everybody involved. So.
And I will touch on that real quick, and I know we need to move on. But like Mrs. Garner said, we did this as a group. I know Mr. Edwards and Mr. Campbell and Mr. Ritchie weren't able to attend. but we, forwarded out a copy. But this was great because it was 7 of us sitting there, and everybody had an opportunity to weigh in. 6 of us. Everybody had a chance to weigh in and give their opinion. And Samantha Bosserman, who assisted Gina Patterson, was typing things in as we talked. And again, that's why I had asked Paula this afternoon to leave off that last page so we could talk about it at our next work session. So,
Can I say something about this?
Yes, sir, Mr. Ritchie.
Since we have a page that we have to discuss at our next work session, should we be voting on this tonight?
we're going to vote on the norms tonight, and then we will add the disciplinary action after that. We can go back and add that to the board norms.
Okay, because, all right. I'm not comfortable with all of them either. And, I couldn't be at the meeting. I had to work, so I.
Well, and that's totally understandable.
Right,
But
so I didn't really have any input. So I have issues with some of them, so I don't think I can vote for them tonight.
Okay. All right, Mr. Nichols.
Do you want to also mention the March regular school?
Oh, yes. The March regular meeting is going to be modified, and we are moving that date, Mrs. Giubbotio, to
16?
it's the same day as the spring forum, so that's why we're moving the date. The 17th.
From the 16th to the 17th.
16th to the 17th. And again, that is because many of our members will be attending the spring forum, which will be held in Amherst County on the 16th.
Okay. Moving on then with just regular comments. You mentioned attending the VSBA legislative meeting. We have to keep up with that. I would say more this year legislative issues than we ever have before. There are well over 400 bills, education-related, that have been put in place. There's some significant changes that we see taking place, so I will be updating the board on things as we go through, and of course, watching it very closely for the Finance Committee, because it could have some significant impact on our budget for next year. I couldn't help but laugh at a comment that Mr. Allgood made the evening after he heard so many of the things going on. Mr. Allgood, I don't know if you want to relay that tonight or not.
What was that?
When you said that you thought it was always...
Yes, in the past, I thought that dumb board was sending stuff down to the teachers and the principals just because maybe they didn't like us. It's like, why are they sending such stupid things for us to do? And that was usually, some of the principals out there are laughing, but they said the same thing. We've said it together. Joan, I've heard you share with me too. We've been teachers. But I found out a lot of the dumb things are coming from the state, and we have no control over it. We have to follow what the state laws are. And as you know now, there's some things on the agenda now that scares the you-know-what out of me, with some of the things coming up that govern the way we do school. And this board has nothing they can do about it. So we have some authority, but very little at times. Our hands are tied.
So we will try to keep abreast of those things as they come down the pike. They are moving through them very rapidly, is what I understand. And
So don't shoot the messenger.
yeah. Also, I just want to give a bit of an update. I told you earlier that we were recipients with Halifax County and with Henrico County, 2 schools, and Charles City on an innovation grant. Those are good things that are happening for us that are going to pave the way for us to be able to work on some apprenticeship and work opportunities and things of that nature. Our teachers and principals are meeting together, and there will be some components that we'll bring to the work session for you to consider for next year, as well as we have that meeting. And then I wanted to bring to everyone's attention that there will be meetings at Parkview High School and Bluestone High School in February the 3rd and 5th that will be specifically attending to the new dual enrollment activities that we learned about at our December meeting, and talking about the career plans that students will be making, and updating parents, in particular of middle school and high school students, on those issues that are coming to the fore. So that'll be, I believe, at Parkview on the 3rd and at Bluestone on February the 5th as a preemptive opportunity for students and parents to get a better idea of classes that they would sign up for next year. And that'll be my report for tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. I just have one comment, and this is going to piggyback on what Mr. Edwards said earlier, and I was surprised to hear it. Moving forward, we have given Mr. Nichols a directive for our school system moving forward for next year, and I know the principals are going to be in place making decisions soon about scheduling. I was shocked to hear that Mrs. Lack said that she didn't have a teacher, and that middle school was not afforded the same opportunity as Parkview Middle School. I just want to make sure that you all are aware that this board has given our superintendent a directive when we're making schedules next year, that each and every student that attend Mecklenburg County Public Schools will be afforded the same opportunity, whether it be Bluestone or Parkview. You all will be on the same page. We have given that directive. We've got to make it happen. We're getting ready to move and be together as one big family in a couple of years. We don't need to wait and start it then. We need to do it now. So I just pray that in preparing for the future and preparing for next year, that you all are doing this, that everybody is being afforded the same opportunity on each end of the county. Thank you.
But in their defense, a geometry teacher is not something a middle school usually has. So if you're saying that we're going to hire a geometry teacher to teach one class at the middle school, I don't think that's going to happen.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that every child should be afforded the same opportunity on each end of the county, whatever it may be. We have talked about Skyping. We've talked about swapping teachers. We've talked about a lot of different things. But if a child wants to take it and they have that opportunity and it's denied only because they don't have a teacher to do it, that's not acceptable.
And so just academics, because there's other things that those schools don't have.
Well,
I just don't want to go down that road where if we're able to do something at one school, we're not going to do it just because we can't do it at other schools, like the robotics program. You know, I think that's a great thing, and I'm glad that we have people over there who can do it. We don't have the people. We're not going to have the people to do that at Parkview, but I'm perfectly fine with that. And I don't want to go down the road where we say, okay, we can't do that at Bluestone anymore because we're not duplicating it.
But I just know that we've been in situations in years past where a child has had an opportunity and was not afforded that opportunity for whatever reason, whether it wasn't a teacher or we couldn't swap up or we didn't plan properly. I just want to make sure that we're planning for our children academically to be able to achieve the same academics on both ends of the county.
I agree.
That's right.
Okay.
Can I address the robotics? Robotics was offered to both schools.
I'm not complaining about robotics.
But I'm saying, that's the reason why it's not at Parkview. It was, Mr. Taylor did not want it. And Bluestone actually did not want it, but in the end, they decided to do it. That's the reason why it's only.
It's not just that. I got something in the mail the other day about a dance team at Parkview. You know, are they going to have a dance team at Bluestone? I just want to be careful that we word this very specifically.
I'm going to phrase.
Not every little opportunity.
I'm going to phrase academically that each child in the county needs to be afforded the same opportunity. Our next.
If I may add, Mr. Chairman, I think that's the whole thing. I've heard the rhetoric both ways. The whole thing is that we want the county to be one unit. And when it comes to academics is one of the things that I am concerned about as far as being both ends of the county. There are going to always be some little things that are different on one end of the county than it is the other. But when it comes to a child receiving an education, as we had the big argument earlier in the year, I think that every child, whether it's on the eastern end or the western end, should be given the opportunity to receive a quality education. That's what we're all talking about. There will always be some little small thing that's going to be different. We can't help that. That's life. But for the majority of our educational system, we want both ends of the county to feel comfortable.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Number 8 is committee reports. At this time, I'm going to just really ask quickly, I know we just set those up. I know we have something from Finance, Joint Education and Capital Improvement Committee.
No report tonight.
All right, and next is item B, Finance Committee.
Finance Committee met at 5 o'clock this afternoon. Mrs. Garner, Mrs. Bailey, and myself. We went over the payment of the bills. We will recommend payment of the bills tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. School Safety Committee.
We haven't met yet.
Gifted and Talented.
We haven't met.
CTE.
We haven't met.
Athletics.
Haven't met.
Instruction.
We have not met.
With that being said, I would like for those committees to be able to pick a date and work together, to pick a date to be able to meet with your counterparts, and to be able to bring something back each month to our public and to our other board members, so everybody will know what's going on in the school system. So if you all would work together with those groups, whether it's, school safety, athletics, or whatever, so we will have something each month to report back. We would greatly appreciate it. Again, it's just another way to keep all of the board members informed about what's going on. Number 9 is public input. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for public input?
We do. At this time, matters may be publicly brought to the attention of the board and administration. Public comments at board meetings are just one of many avenues for communication, and the board recognizes and appreciates the importance of input from and communication with the board we represent, the public we represent. The public is invited to sign up to speak. The clerk of the board will write down your name, contact information, and the topic that you wish to speak about. The public is allowed up to 6 minutes at most meetings to express their views. Please respect that time limitation. It will be enforced. Please understand that it may not be possible to immediately respond to questions. Again, we welcome and appreciate your input. Prior to beginning your comment, please state your name to the board. Mr. Fuller?
I know y'all get tired of seeing me here, but I believe in being treated right. And I asked 3 months ago why the sub-bus drivers didn't get the raise they were promised. And I've never got an answer. The only thing I get is we're working on next year's budget. That's not what was told of me, unless I heard different from other folks, but the other folks agree with me. And I still haven't got an answer. And then the second thing is, why do the regular drivers get more pay than the sub-driver? Now, I'm going to give you some examples. I live in Finchley, and it's not unusual for me to be sent to the low end of the county. They get a call at 5:30 in the morning saying, we need you to go to, I don't turn them down. But that's 2 hours of my time daily that I don't get a cent for. It takes 30 minutes to go down there, 30 minutes to come back. You do that twice a day. Things like this, should be looked at. It's why we suffer. You talk about your children, that's fine, but who gets them to school? It's not the teachers. So, I'm just asking to be treated fair and right, and I don't feel like I'm being done. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Amadio, anyone else?
That's it.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to move to number 10. Can I get a motion that we approve the minutes of the school board meeting held at the school board office in Boydton, Virginia on Monday, December 2nd, 2019 at 6 p.m.? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mrs. Garner, a second from Mr. Ritchie. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Allgood?
I wasn't here, so I abstained.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes. Can I get a motion that we approve the minutes of the special school board meeting held at the school board office in Boynton, Virginia on Tuesday, December the 10th, 2019 at 5 p.m.?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Edwards, a second from Mrs. Garner. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Allgood?
Abstain.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes. Can I get a motion that the minutes of the regular school board meeting held at the school board office in Boynton, Virginia on Monday, December 16th, 2019 at 6 p.m.?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mrs. Garner, a second from Mr. Palmer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Allgood?
Abstain.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes. We have a motion from our finance chairman, Mr. Edwards, to pay the bills.
Finance Committee recommends paying the bills. That's a motion.
We have a motion, Mrs. Giammatteo. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Allgood?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes. Can I get a motion that we accept the personnel agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Palmer, a second from Mrs. Garner. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Allgood?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes. Can I get a motion that F, Student Matter SD-2019-2020-07, we go by the superintendent's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Edwards, a second from Mr. Allgood. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Allgood?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes. Can I get a motion that we accept the superintendent's recommendation on Student Matter SD-2019-2020-08?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Edwards, a second from Mrs. Smith. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Allgood?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes. Can I get a motion that we accept the recommendation from Mrs. Sturdivant on the Parkview High School field trips as presented?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Allgood, a second from Mr. Palmer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Allgood?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes. Can I get a motion that we accept the information that was given out last month by Mrs. Hendrick on Need My Transcript, NMT MOU? Can I get a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to table that until another time, more study for this item.
Second.
I have a motion to table and a motion to second. Does anyone have any discussion on this?
Did everybody get the answers that, did y'all get a chance to, did y'all get those?
Yes.
Everyone should have received.
Yeah, we've received it, but I still think we need to do more investigation on this.
Shouldn't that be a motion to postpone to next meeting?
Well, table, that's what.
Table later in the same meeting, right?
Oh, all right,
Yeah, we would
postpone.
postpone the vote.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to change my motion to postpone until the next meeting.
Are there any other motions on the floor to accept or deny? We have a motion on the floor to postpone this to another meeting date from Mrs. Garner, a second from Mr. Edwards. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Discussion.
Yes, just, I asked for discussion, yes.
Can y'all, can you be a little bit more specific as to what you want her to research? Because she did what we
I'm
asked
just
her to.
not convinced that this is what we need in Mecklenburg County. I'm just not convinced. I'm sorry. I want to know more about it. I mean, it's only being used what, about 4 schools in the county, in the state?
She's got 3.
All right, 3.
Well, and it's only been in reality a year or less.
Yeah.
You know, I like to see some, we step into these things really fast. You know, I think we need to, use a little more common sense and slow down a little bit and get it right the first time rather than say, I'm sorry later, if that's okay.
And I think she's on one of the committees that they can discuss it, and she can give deeper information to them, and they can come back and tell us more. Like I said, I'm just not totally on board with that program at all.
So would you suggest the instruction committee talk with her about what's going to, I mean, is there more information that's going to convince you? Because if you want to, I'm just saying, just kind of putting it off. I'm not sure that any information's going to.
I don't know. I just like to have something more than 3 recommendations from 3 schools in the state of Virginia when we've got all these school districts and with the 4th guinea pig in a row.
Mrs. Hendrick, if you would please come up to the podium.
I mean, I don't know.
Mrs. Hendrick, I did see where you sent to all of us a copy of the Need My Transcript information from the participating divisions.
Yes.
And this is, how long has this been in implementation?
So the program overall, I'm not sure how many, I didn't ask how many years Need My Transcript has been in service. Each school I asked how long they specifically had used it. One had used it since 2011, and the other schools had used it 2 years and one over a year.
So can you collect any data that you could give to the board or to the instruction committee once they meet? That would probably be a good opportunity for you all to talk about this if we're going to postpone this motion tonight.
Okay, what kind of data would you like me to bring back?
Mrs. Garner or Mr. Edwards?
How is it introduced to the parents? How many parents use it? How many students use it?
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
that
you know,
type of-
okay, and I can reach out to the schools and ask them how they had introduced it to the parents, or how they use it. How I see us using it is having a link on the websites for the schools. So let's say Amy, who has graduated from Bluestone High School, has moved to Myrtle Beach, and she now wants to apply for a job with Myrtle Beach City Public Schools. But they need a copy of her high school transcripts. Well, currently, with the process in place, she would have to have a signed records transcript request form. That would require her to mail it in to the guidance departments here at Bluestone High School, including her $2 transcript fee. Then, once that transcript request is finished, it then has to be mailed back to her in Myrtle Beach City Public Schools. The online version would just allow her to go online, it would verify who she is. She would then be able to pay with a credit card, and the school counseling secretary right away would receive her request, verify that she is who she is, and then could then mail it the same day or within, we usually say a 24 to 72 hour turnaround to get those completed, but it would alleviate someone having to travel here or wait for mailing a records request to us. So they don't have access to any student data. We're not giving them access to any of the transcripts, any grades, or anything on the individual students. It's just for those situations, like we have a student will come in and say, I need a copy of my transcripts. Well, do you accept a credit card? Well, unfortunately, we do not accept a credit card. But if that's all they have to pay, you know, they will sometimes, we'll just say, we'll come back and, you can pay for it, just come back and see us later. But then we would also have the options at a iPad or a laptop, they could then log right on and pay their fee right then. And then it would email the secretary, letting them know that a transcript needs to be done. And then when she completes that transcript request, she will then mark that it's been completed, and the recipient then will get an email saying your transcript request has been fulfilled and will be mailed to you, emailed, or however they have requested it to be done. But they will not have any access to our records with the way we're requesting it. There is one school, one of the districts that I did call and we talked to, they do the whole process. That company handles the transcripts. The school doesn't do any of it. But when we're not asking for that, we're just asking for the ability to help with those students who don't live in the area and to be able to process those credit card payments. And just make it more convenient for our students and our graduates. That's all.
Ms. Hendrick, does it actually save any of our staff time?
Absolutely. It would save our staff time. So currently, when someone comes in, you've got to stop what you're doing. Our school counselors, and that's why I put the data at the top, Parkview High School processed 463 transcript requests last year. So you imagine sometimes you're going to have 4 or 5. End of the year, you can have 15 to 20 in a day. So imagine being a school counseling secretary by yourself in a very busy office. Someone comes in, you've got to stop right away what you're doing, handle that transcript request, the phone calls, third-party verification, and handle that right away. So it just gives that person, they have email proof that it's come in, it's been documented, so they can finish up the task right at hand, and then within the next few minutes, get back to what they want. Everyone that I've spoken to, yes, it's only been 3 schools that have used this, and I understand your concern about wanting more feedback on that, but they have all been very positive. One girl said it was a lifesaver. That was the term for her. She said that they did not have a school counseling secretary for 6 months due to a medical injury, and this got those counselors through that 6 months. Without it, they would have been overwhelmed with those records requests. But it doesn't put any student data, transcripts, grades, anything that's confidential at any risk, because we're not giving them access to those records.
So, Ms. Hendricks, so you're saying this would expedite the process and possibly assist students to get into the universities of their choice or whatever they are participating in at a quicker time?
So like let's say you want to apply to UVA and you want to apply to Virginia State. So you're sitting in Miss Bailey's class, and Miss Bailey has given you 10 minutes in the day to work on your college application. Oh wait, I need to send my records, my transcripts. You as a current student can log on really quick, submit a records request for UVA and Virginia State, and Miss Broom or Miss Sadowski right away is going to get that. So you didn't have to leave class, you didn't have to go and collect another form, wait in line if they were busy. She will get that email notification that you submitted that records request online. And then once she has mailed it to those universities, she goes back into the system, logs that it has been mailed, and then they will notify you as a student that it has been completed.
So if you had this process in process, would the student also have the option, if they didn't want to participate, of using the old way of doing it?
Absolutely. We will still have our transcript request forms on hand, so anyone can still come into the office, fill out the form the traditional way, pay their cash, and get them right then and there. We are not eliminating that process. We just want to streamline. We know technology is increasing. These kids are using their cell phones, they're using their computers. People are moving out of state, out of country for these jobs. And when they call us, they're like, we have to have written verification to confirm your identity, and it is going to be a certain amount of turnaround because we have to receive that request, prove of who you are, and then you have to talk about payment. They've got to send a check or money order, and we don't hold the check or money order over their heads. We're not sending it till we get that because we understand. But this will help us with that process, give us more verifications and checks through the systems, if that makes sense, and just streamline that process. Save time for the counselors, the secretaries, our students, and our graduates who decide to use it.
Mr. Edwards.
Question. Who's going to be responsible for uploading all these transcripts and all this information onto the computers?
You don't upload it to the computer.
Where does it come from?
The transcripts, the counselor secretaries, they have all that. So all they have to do is, what happens is this secretary will get an email, and the secretary will say that Mr. Edwards has requested his transcripts to be sent to UVA. So she will go into the program, she will say, accept the request, and then she will print off your transcript, put it in an envelope, seal it, stamp it, put it in the mail to UVA, just like she always has. but then we'll log back into the system and check that your transcript has been mailed to UVA. Currently, as a student, you would have to come in and verify that it was sent after you requested it, and she just checks on a sheet of paper that it was sent the date and the time. But they will not have access to the actual records. All that will still be done through the mail or hand in hand like it has been before.
Mr. Chairman.
They're taking the credit
Mr.
card.
Palmer?
I know what you're doing.
I think that it appears that still there are some questions, and actually, I have questions. So I agree with Ms. Garner and Mr. Edwards. Let's just table this until another.
There is a motion on the floor to postpone this. There's a recommendation from Mrs. Garner, a second from Mr. Edwards. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
No.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Allgood?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
No. So at this time, we're going to postpone this. Ms. Hendrick, I will we'll have the instruction committee get with you, get some more information for our board members, and put this back on the agenda for next month, for February, so we can vote on it then, and so we can get it in place then. All right, thank you very much for your time. The next one is the new high school, middle school complex change request. Do I have a motion that we accept that request of moving the barn placement?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Edwards, a second from Mr. Allgood. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Allgood?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
No. Next is the new bond resolution for the middle high school complex. Can I get a motion that we accept that as presented?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Edwards, a second from Mrs. Garner. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Abstain.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Allgood?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes. Item L is school board norms. Can I get a motion that we accept the board norms as presented?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mrs. Bailey, a second from Mr. Garner. Is there any more discussion?
You said we're going to discuss this other part that was left off later?
We're going to talk about that, yes, sir, at our work session.
Okay, good.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I mentioned it already, but I'll mention it again. I'd like the opportunity to discuss the whole thing at the work session. So those of us that missed it could have input on what's on here.
Mrs. Giamatti, when did you send that out to the other board members? Did you not get a copy of it
No, I'm
before
sure
tonight?
I did, but I didn't read it before tonight, which is my fault, but, you know.
Okay,
You
I
don't
just-
always read your email.
Well, no, I'm not saying that. I just want to make sure that you got a copy of it. That's the only reason why I asked
Well, I have a
that.
copy right here.
Okay, well, again, I mean, this is our point. We've got a motion on the floor and a second, and is there any discussion?
That's all my discussion.
Okay.
It was sent out last Thursday.
January 16th.
Yeah.
All right, Madam Clerk, I'm going to call for the vote, please.
Okay. Mr. Ritchie?
No.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Allgood?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
No.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes. Can I get a motion that we move our regularly scheduled board meeting in March from the 16th until the 17th?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Allgood, a second from Mrs. Garner. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Allgood?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes, on reminders, February the 11th, Brunswick High School Parent-Teacher Conferences and the CT Expo.
Bluestone.
Bluestone, what did I say?
Brunswick.
God, why did I say that? Good Lord.
You saw VHF.
Yeah, I did. Bluestone High School Parent-Teacher Conferences, thank you. CT Expo is from 4:15 until 6:30, that's on the 11th. On the 13th is Parkview High School Parent-Teacher Conferences, and their CT Expo is from 4:15 until 6:30. February the 17th is President's Day. Our schools will be closed. And then our regular next scheduled board meeting will be the 18th. Also, as a reminder, we will have a work session on February the 10th at 6 o'clock here at the central office. And again, that will be a work session. At this time, we have board member remarks, and I'm going to go around the room. And Mr. Edwards.
Nothing much. I think Mr. Fuller's been up here enough. He's worn his shoes out coming asking for this question. Can we get him an answer? I mean, let's just get him an answer. And he really comes up with a pretty good point. If you drive, you drive. You should get paid. So, I mean, if we have the money, I think we should do what we need to do to get these people happy, because we need bus drivers really bad. That's all I have.
Mr. Allgood.
Just say that my first regular meeting, I was humbled to be elected to do this job. I have a warped sense of humor, as most of you know, but I take this very seriously. I may laugh sometimes at things that you don't find funny, but I do take this job very seriously, and I want to do the best job I can for the constituents of in my district.
Thank you, Mr. Allgood. Mr. Palmer.
I would just like to congratulate our teachers on their receiving of the certificate tonight, and also the students for their awards that they have participated in and excelled. So I congratulate both groups.
Mr. Ritchie.
Yeah, I appreciate the work the principals do, and our newest Mrs. Sturtevant has several Ritchies in her building, and we've had all good years. Mr. Dixon has another one of my children, and they've all had great years. My wife Keisha, she's had a great year, so I really appreciate the work that the principals and do at all our schools. Thank you.
Mrs. Smith.
I really appreciate all of you too, and the work that you do. You know, I know some of the things that you have to go through and deal with, and we just couldn't do it. We couldn't make it without you, all of you, the principals, assistant principals, and bus drivers, cafeteria staff. Everybody is necessary to make things work out, and we do appreciate our workers. I appreciate the fact that you were celebrated tonight. I think that was a good, positive thing. And I'm new at this too. I'm doing a lot of learning, but I'm really serious about my job too, as Mr. Allgood said. I want the best for our system. I want us to have the best students who are capable of competing globally, and I know we can do it. We have a great system, and I think we have a great potential. Mecklenburg is a sleeping giant in the other areas, the lakes and what have you, tourism, but I think Mecklenburg is a sleeping giant in the people that we have here who are so capable. And I look forward to continuing to work with you, and I will certainly do my best to see that my constituents are served.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Bailey.
Yes, I just wanted to take an opportunity just to remind my fellow board members that your statement of economic interest is due the first part of February. Don't let that sneak up on you, because it will cost you money if you don't have it in time. And I want to thank Mr. Honeycutt, and I want to thank Ms. Garner for your leadership, and thank you for making this board norms actually become a reality. And I think our board will be better served by having those in place. And it is a living document that can be changed as this board sees fit. They belong to us. They don't belong to anybody else, and we can make them whatever we want to. So we should be open to making them our own as we move forward. And thank you, Mr. Nichols, for all that you do for us, and also to all our principals who are still in the room.
Ms. Garner.
Hope all of you had a nice Christmas and ready to end the year. And congratulations to all the principals and assistant principals. You do a heck of a job. I would not have it.
And in closing, I would like to say to my fellow board members, I am humbled by the opportunity to sit here as board chair for this year. I think this was a positive step in the right direction by accepting these board norms tonight. Going over those, I'm glad all of those who were able to participate participated, so it wasn't just one-sided. With that being said, we are coming together as a division. I'm excited about what's about to happen and what's going to continue to happen. Again, thank you to our principals, our assistant principals, Mrs. Sturdivant. We welcome you again to Parkview High School. I have received several messages on Messenger from some of your staff already and said that this board made the right decision in bringing you forward as their principal. So we appreciate what you're already doing and the impact, of course, that you're already making on your staff there at Parkview High School. So again, thank you all very much, and that's all. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you all. Good night.